Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of NB8 right here on Wood TV. Plus, Phil Pinarski here, once again, joined by AJ Evans. AJ, so glad to have you back on. We have a lot to get to, namely being the Pistons recap. They have continued to extend their lead over the rest of the Eastern Conference. And the trade deadline is actually going to be here before we know it. For those who maybe aren't aware, you actually can't trade any players in the NBA past a certain point as we approach, past the halfway point of the season. The trade deadline is approaching on February 5th. So teams are still scrambling to try and make some trades, maybe get over the hump, make that final push into the playoffs. We'll be touching on a couple of top names in the association and seeing where they might be best fit post-trade deadline. We'll get to that in just a little bit as well. But first things first, we do want to talk about the big breaking news. We're just going to jump straight into the Pistons recap, AJ, before the NBA had other ideas. The big breaking news involves my Memphis Grizzlies and their owner, Robert Pera. According to Pablo Torre, as part of the Dan Le Batard show, he does a great job. Have the utmost respect for Pablo Torre, taking the time out and researching all of his stories before they get pushed out. This recent story, though, does involve the Grizzlies and Robert Pera. Like I said, there are a couple of allegations in there. More information is still coming out, so we're not going to spend too much time talking about it on today's episode. Going to save that for probably next week when we do learn a little bit more information. Again, at the time of recording this just came down from Pablo Torre. It alleges that Robert Pera's company Ubiquity, which has led him to becoming one of the most one of the most wealthy owners in the entire association. I think he's number 4 or number 5 right now amongst all active owners. That company has allegedly been playing a role in Russia's war with Ukraine as far as drone software and how they're able to operate those in Ukraine. There are also allegations involving the team itself, with Robert Pera having issues with the coaching staff for not letting him play against certain players one-on-one. Don't know if you've ever heard of another owner doing anything like that. There are also accusations that he reportedly wanted to buy even more of the majority share of the Grizzlies after finding out that a girl he went on a date with thought that Justin Timberlake, who is a minority owner, that Justin Timberlake was the owner, and he apparently was very jealous about that. Again, these are all just accusations. According to the reporting, AJ has got the exact right reaction to all of this news. And again, this is all reporting from Pablo Torre. Like I said, part of Pablo Torre Finds Out. If you want to check out more information, again, check out all of that latest reporting online. I have not seen any sort of comment from Robert Pera or the Memphis Grizzlies organization. So again, these are all accusations at this point and allegations. But again, more information is sure to come out. Let's switch gears now a little bit, AJ. Let's get back on the positive track because the Detroit Pistons have continued to extend their lead in the Eastern Conference. Quickly just brushing past the Memphis Grizzlies situation. Currently have a 5-game lead over the Boston Celtics. Let's quickly go over this past week of games for the Pistons. They had 3 of them. They wound up winning 2 of them and losing the one in the middle. We'll start with that first game. It was a win at New Orleans. They were taking on the Pelicans. They won 112 to 104. Fun fact in that one, the Pistons led wire to wire, meaning that they never trailed at any point in that game. There was a tie at 0-0, and ever since then, the Pistons led the rest of the way through. Jalen Duren, big game from him, 20 and 15, once again kind of proving that he should be considered. I think he should be, and I know AJ agrees with me, should be an all-star, but he's at least in that consideration. Cade obviously did not play in that one, but everyone kind of stepped up in his absence. 26 total assists in that one, and nobody had more than 4. So again, everybody was passing the ball. Obviously, like I said, you don't want the team to get used to not having Cade out there because he is the engine and that star player. But when it does miss a game or two here, it is great to see a team kind of just put everything aside and realize that they need to step things up and help out, and cover all the different bases that Cade was leaving as an absence.
Yeah, for sure. The strength of numbers thing is real. I think Jalen Duren had a phenomenal performance in that game, but it was really encouraging to see the rest of the team step up the way that they did, because I think there's a perception around the league right now that Cade is really just carrying this team, and he does a lot on a night-to-night basis, but there are a lot of talented pieces within this rotation that make this team go. And so it is encouraging. I don't think that would be something that's sustainable, of course, but it was nice to see a handful of guys step out of their roles and really expand for a night or two. So it was really cool to see, Phil.
Yeah, no, and one thing I really like that JB Bickerstaff has been doing is when Cade does miss time, or really when anybody misses time, there isn't just one guy that comes in off the bench to fill that role. He is willing to put a bunch of different guys into the starting rotation and just kind of see how they play out. You know, Dennis Jenkins got the start for Cade in that one, and, you know, he played very well. He had a couple of bad turnovers, but again, I think he had 17 points, and he was one of those guys with 4 assists. So, you know, getting a guy who, I've said it multiple times, had no idea he was even on the roster at the start of the season, and he has just continued to impress me game in and game out. So that was great. Bad news, though, in the next game, the Pistons did drop that one, 111 to 104. That was versus the Houston Rockets. Again, they've already played the Rockets twice this year, so they won't see each other unless they magically meet up in the NBA Finals at the end of the year. Rockets, again, kind of got that revenge, so they split the series 1-1 this season. The Pistons did make it a bit closer in the fourth quarter, but this game was really decided in that third quarter where the Pistons were outscored by 14 points, and Kevin Durant, big part of that. He had 32 in that game. You know, like I said, you got Pistons and Rockets, they split the season series. I think if Pistons fans maybe heard that in the offseason, knowing that the Rockets had Kevin Durant and all these, you know, top guys on their team, knowing that they split the season series, I feel like a lot of Pistons fans would take that. But I don't know, after that game, it just felt a little disheartening. It didn't feel as great as, you know, kind of resting on the fact that they had split the season series.
Yeah, Phil, I completely agree with you. I think that was a really unique game to see for me because I think, one, Kevin Durant has spent his entire career almost dominating the Pistons. I did not know until I was made aware of the fact he's averaging 30 points a game against Detroit through his career.
Wow.
That's his highest total against any opposing team in his career.
What did the Pistons do to him?
I don't know, man. He always plays well. But no, I think something that I noted, I believe it happened in the third quarter that you were referring to, Phil, was Jalen Duren kind of struggled to switch on ball screens with Kevin Durant. There were, I think it was 2 or 3 times in a row. I believe it was at least twice, but Kevin Durant got him in a switch and hit a straightaway 3. And that's something that does concern me a little bit just because being switchable and switchability on defense is something that is really huge in the postseason. Teams love to exploit that. And that's also, too, where teams pull away. If you got a guy who you can put the ball in his hands a few times in the third quarter and get a few tough points out of a few broken possessions, then you can win a game off of that. Though that's an extra 6 to 8 points. So that was a little discouraging, but overall, though, I'm not too concerned. The Rockets are a team that are contending for the finals, and it was nice to see the Pistons show some fight and resiliency against that team. So I really like what Houston's doing. They're obviously a really good team defensively. I think they stifled Detroit at times. They also rebounded a little bit better than the Pistons in that one, but it was still a great game nonetheless. You can't be too mad about it, Phil.
Yeah, and you had the 2 Thompson twins playing against each other. Every time that happens, that's always just fun to see. Again, NBA is all about family. Well, that's what, you know, that's literally family out on the court there. And, you know, again, the Rockets, I know they've had their struggles recently, but they're still, I think, one of the favorites to advance in the West. I mean, you just look at the team top to bottom. I mean, anytime you've got Kevin Durant playing as well as he is and how well as he has so far this season, I mean, you're going to be in game. So, again, something to hang your hat on, but, again, also something to kind of be wary about. Also, it's all about matchups, and the Rockets honestly match up so well against so many different teams, including the Pistons. So
no, I think that is an excellent point, and it's something that I always think about when we talk about the playoffs. Like, regardless of seeding and how many games the team has won, can this team win a 7-game series? I think the Rockets can win a 7-game series against anybody. They're that good defensively. They have a lot of weapons, and you have one of the all-time greatest scorers in Kevin Durant. That's a recipe for success if you're entering the playoffs.
Definitely. Kevin Durant, another playoff riser as well. So as soon as the playoffs hit, you know that he's bringing it every single game. All right, well, let's move on. Again, they did lose that game, but they did bounce back again. And I've always said that really shows kind of the mark of a true dominant team is that after a loss, how do you bounce back? They ended up dominating the Sacramento Kings 139 to 116. A 23-point victory there. A big-time bounce-back game, like I said, for the whole whole team. Cade with 29, 11, and 5. He had a really great game. And that was actually the first time that he shot over 50% from the field since that January 5th game against the New York Knicks when they won by 31. So again, it was good to see Cade kind of back in that mode of scoring very effectively. And, not to say that he has been bad in this recent stretch of games where he hasn't shot the ball well, because he's been impactful in so many other ways. But it just goes to show that when Cade is hitting his shots, this team can beat you and probably will beat you by double digits.
For sure, man. Yeah, and an efficient Cade is an unstoppable force against any opposing team. But yeah, that was a nice victory. I thought at times Detroit played a little bit down. I think they got a little bit undisciplined at times. But overall, I mean, anytime you can win by 20, you can't say too much about it. They did a terrific job. It was interesting to see that Kings team, Phil, because as you know, I had them projected to make the playoffs. And there's so much individual talent on that team, but things have just not come together at all. And that was interesting to see them so up close in this game, and just to see how lopsided they've been on both ends of the floor. But nonetheless, it was a good win for Detroit, and Pistons keep rolling. They stay atop the East.
Yeah, again, you hate to disparage the Kings because they are going through a really bad season already. But like you said, that's a pretty talented team. I mean, they have the capability of beating teams. I mean, same thing with New Orleans, like we saw. New Orleans having a really down year, but, look at who's on that team on paper. Zion Williamson is still there. Trey Murphy is still there. Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears are playing great. They do have guys that could turn it on any given night and give you problems. So good for Detroit and able to stave off the Kings and win pretty handily. AJ, let's move on to the next couple of games before we have our next episode. Again, before we record it, the Pistons will be playing 4 more games, and that actually begins tonight as they take on the Denver Nuggets. Then after that, they travel to Phoenix to take on the Suns. Then they head to Golden State and take on the Warriors before they're back home in Detroit hosting the the Brooklyn Nets. Gosh, New Jersey Nets. Wow, throwback on that. But let's talk about these upcoming 4 games, AJ. Which one of those are you most excited about? Those first 3 games in particular look very good as the team is headed out west.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good slate of games that we have coming up. But I'd have to say maybe the Suns game, just because there were some fireworks in the last game, and I'm excited to see what happens again. That's a feisty Phoenix team that we talked about. We were both pretty impressed with them. You know, Colin Gillespie, Dylan Brooks, Devin Booker, of course. And Book didn't even play the last time that they were in Detroit. So I'm interested to see how they hold up in that game. The Suns have been, I think, one of the more impressive stories of this season amongst all NBA teams. So, like I said, though, I hope the West Coast is kind to the Pistons and they're able to do their thing. But, yeah, I'm excited to see these next couple of games. Obviously, Nikola Jokic is not going to be playing tonight in Denver, but that'll be a good game still.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Suns game has to be one because you got to look at what the Suns are able to do, and it's another team that I just think matches up so well against so many different teams. So it's got to be one that you circle. The Jokic not being in this one tonight obviously puts a little bit of damper on that game because that would have been an exciting one, and the Jimmy Butler injury as well for Golden State also kind of putting a damper on that. Will be interesting to see what their record is in those 3 games on the road before they head back to Detroit and take on the Nets. So we'll keep a close eye on that one. We'll be bringing you the latest from those scores in next week's episode as well. All right, AJ, well, we're halfway through the episode today, and I think we should dedicate quite a bit of time to talking about the trade deadline. Like I mentioned, it's happening on February 5th. After that, teams cannot make any more trades throughout the regular season with each other, so it's a big time, really, for GMs all across the NBA, not just for competing teams looking to maybe add one last guy to get them over the hump, get them into the playoffs, or get them in better seeding for the playoffs. But there's also teams out there that have completely given up already. Maybe they've already thrown in the towel on the season that are looking to get a lot of positive return on maybe some of their guys that are hurt or maybe aren't performing that well that, teams might be eyeing to add. So we've got a couple of big names that have already been circulating the trade rumors right now that we want to kind of get to and kind of just talk about where we think they might be best fitted, if we think they'll be traded at all, or really what could be the return for them. Let's start with one of the big names, and we talked a little bit about it last week, that being Ja Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies. AJ, do you think, things have changed? Obviously, he had a good stretch, and things looked like he was maybe fixing his relationship with the Grizzlies, but then he obviously suffered that UCL injury to his elbow and is out the next 3 weeks. So we won't see him before the trade deadline passes in a Grizzlies uniform. Will he be still in a Grizzlies uniform after the trade deadline? Don't hurt my feelings. I can handle it. I'm ready for whatever, AJ.
I think there's a 50-50 shot he's not.
Okay.
I really do. I think both he and the Grizzlies want to make this work. I do. But I think they're both on opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of what they want. And to be completely honest, Phil, I'm not even too sure what either of them want. I just know that they're both upset, and they've been upset since the start of the season. I do think, though, Ja's trade value at this point is the lowest it's probably been in his career. I think a lot of outsiders, and even I've seen some executives, anonymous people who have commented on articles to reporters have claimed he's lost a step. I don't buy that. I don't think he's lost a step. I think he's still just as athletic and as dynamic as he was when he was at the top of the league. But I do think he's disengaged and he's frustrated. And I don't think he feels comfortable at all playing in a Grizzlies uniform and playing in this system.
Right.
And that can make you a shell of who you are as a ball player. So like I said, I'll say there's a 50-50 shot he's not in a uniform. But like I said, though, I think the Grizzlies might be inclined to keep him just on the simple fact that they may not feel they're able to get enough for him.
Right.
Because a lot of teams view this as what do they call it, Phil? A buy low and like a low risk, high reward situation. And the Grizzlies probably don't feel that way, especially, I mean, given the fact they have him on this big extension and he's been their guy. You're trading away the guy you tried to build your franchise around. So I'm not even sure how much they could get for him, which I think is part of the reason why I'm leaning more towards him staying.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure, Phil. I'd have to say, though, I think he probably stays, but at this point, it's a toss-up. There's something different coming out of Memphis every week this year.
Yeah, well, clearly, we just talked about some new things coming out. I'm going to make it short. I talked a lot about it last week, but, obviously, I would love Ja Morant to stay with the Memphis Grizzlies. I think, the city of Memphis would really benefit from that. He also really loves the Grizzlies and the city of Memphis, so I think they just have to be able to make it work, whether that means getting rid of the front office and, letting Ja kind of have a little bit more say in how things are run, or getting him back into reality and getting him to realize that he is just part of the team. He is a big part of the team, but there are other guys out there from the front office, coaching staff, other guys on the team to really help him out. And it doesn't have to just be him versus everybody. Right. So that being said, would love to see him in Memphis, but I have this kind of weird thinking with this right now. I think other GMs are salivating at the idea of getting Ja Morant for pennies on the dollar, because he is a great player when he is available. So I think that they are saying, I don't know what we can offer with him, hoping that the Grizzlies will just take the best offer, or possibly even wait on it and let the situation fester in hopes that maybe the Grizzlies and Ja Morant can't come to an agreement, and then Ja potentially leaves for free agency without signing an extension after next year, and then he can go wherever he wants. Maybe you start planting the seeds that, hey, it might be more fun over here on the West Coast, might be more fun over here on the East Coast, maybe up north, just something to kind of get his mind going somewhere else. So I think that there is a chance that he does get moved, but there would have to be a GM out there that is willing to part ways with a lot, because I know the Grizzlies are not. It's different when you've got the face of your franchise versus another star player on your team. Right. If you have the face of your franchise, you have to get something crazy back in return to do it. Yeah. Let's look at the Luka Doncic trade. They traded Luka for Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is a great player that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, actually, but Anthony Davis is a great player. They got Max Christie. They got a lot in return for Luka, but it wasn't enough because of what you were giving up. Yeah. And I know that what happened to the Dallas Mavericks GM, that scares Zach Kleiman and the Memphis Grizzlies. He doesn't want to end up like that. And I feel like he could potentially be like, all right, I think there's nothing wrong with us just keeping him for another year, trying to make this work if we can.
For sure, because whenever you do make a trade of that size, that caliber, you have to have a direction.
Right.
So if you are going to make this trade, are you electing to tear it all down and start from the ground up? Okay, well, if that's the case, then you need somebody to build around. And that person needs to come in return for Ja. Otherwise, don't make the trade. But you can't just take the best offer on the table just because it's the best offer on the table, because it could be a travesty of a deal for you in the long term.
Right, absolutely. All right, well, let's move on to another big name, and I do mean big name. I mean, this is a two-time MVP, former Defensive Player of the Year, former NBA champion we're talking about that is also in the headlines for being a little disgruntled with his current team, and that is Giannis Antetokounmpo. There have been talks really for years now. I mean, let's be honest. There have been talks for years about him joining the Lakers with LeBron James, even before Luka got there. There have been talks about him going to Golden State to hang out with Steph Curry when Klay Thompson was still there and Draymond Green and everybody. So the fact that the NBA, and it's clear that NBA fans want to see him in maybe a bigger market with some other star players. That's what Milwaukee tried to do when they brought Damian Lillard in a couple years ago. That didn't work out. He's currently still on the Milwaukee Bucks. He has said that he wants to stay in Milwaukee. And, you know, having lived in Milwaukee myself, the city of Milwaukee loves Giannis back. They don't want to see him go. But at some point, he has become so very stressful. And I've seen a couple of Bucks games where he just flat out does not look happy. And this is coming from one of the guys who has like one of the best personalities in the entire NBA. He's always smiling. He's always cracking jokes. I haven't heard him laugh once this season. And if anything, I mean, there have been a couple of times when the fans have booed him at home or booed the team, and he's booed them right back. So again, there is an issue right there. There are a couple of teams that are looking to really trade their entire franchise to bring Giannis to town. Do you think Giannis is going to be a Milwaukee Buck after this February 5th trade deadline?
Oof, this is the biggest one. I'm going to have to say no.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no. I'm not sure what a team what type of trade a team would make for him at this point, because Phil, the league is in an interesting spot right now. You look at all these small market franchises that are doing really well and that are sort of building their own thing without having to, you know, take a big stab at a huge guy. You don't have to do that anymore. If you draft well, make a couple of trades here and there, you know, get a first round, get a guy maybe outside the lottery, you can look up and be atop of the Eastern Conference like the Pistons are right now. But I'm not sure how many teams there are that are going to bid for Giannis. It'll be interesting to see. It seems like everyone is obsessed with him getting into a bigger market, but where does he go? The Lakers aren't going to trade for him. The Knicks possibly could, but you and I talked about it a little bit off air. They're in a difficult position right now with all of their finances, so I'm not sure how willing they would be to make this trade. Also, too, I mean, when you look at it, the Knicks are pretty structured with their team right now, and I think they really want to make this work. It would be a big risk to trade for Giannis right now. So I'm not too sure what the market looks like for him. So many teams are in an odd place. I know there are a handful of teams that would be willing to probably mortgage their future. Just for the record, I don't think the Pistons should be one of those teams at all. I don't even think it's something that they should consider. But I will have to say I don't think Giannis will be in a Bucks uniform by the time the deadline is passed. I think he wants to be there, and I know that the general manager and the executives want him to be there. I know the city wants him to be there, but this isn't working.
No. And
it's
I think
not working.
Right. And I think it hasn't been working for a very long time. And, you know, even before they won the finals, I mean, they had a couple of playoff collapses too. So again, there has always been this kind of weird feeling, I guess, between the Bucks organization and Giannis, you know, because you don't want to give up literally the best player, arguably in your franchise's history. I know they had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar back in the 70s and Oscar Robertson, but I mean, Giannis has done so much for these new age Bucks that, you know, fans they've only known Giannis in a Bucks uniform. So it would be very jarring to see him there. I do agree the Pistons maybe should steer clear of that, especially with how they're playing. But that kind of leads me to asking with Giannis in particular, you know, it's a little bit different with like a guy like Ja, who I think is a superstar, but you know, he doesn't have the hardware that Giannis does, or the proven season after season of just domination right now. He's probably having one of his best seasons of all time right now, and nobody's even talking about it because it's, you know, a regular Tuesday for him now. But when it comes to him and, you know, the amount of trade assets that would come with that, you got to think that even if the Bucks traded Giannis away, they might be in a better position going forward versus the team that they trade him to. Because say they trade him to New York, I mean, New York's going to have to trade quite a bit to bring him into town. Other places, you know, I've heard Miami as a destination. Miami is going to have to trade almost half of their starting lineup. I mean, do you is Giannis going to carry that Heat team without maybe like a Tyler Hero, a Norm Powell, or even a Bam Adebayo? Is he carrying them to an NBA championship? I don't know. There might be a bigger play here as far as like there might be like a 3-team trade involving
sure.
Giannis. I think that was kind of what it would have to be, because if it's just a straight up trade for trade, Giannis requires so much and you don't want to give up a lot. So that would be very interesting to see. One place I did have him going, and I wanted to kind of get your perspective on this, AJ, because it kind of blends in with another big name, would be Anthony Davis. You know, I could see him in Dallas maybe if Dallas is okay with, you know, kind of moving into that next generation of, we're going to have Cooper Flagg, and we're going to have Giannis Antetokounmpo. And then we're going to fill out the rest of the roster any which way we can. Mavericks, even though I picked them to go to the playoffs, probably not making the playoffs this year. You get rid of the Anthony Davis contract, which, you know, no shade to Anthony Davis. He is, of course, you know, still dealing with injuries, but that's just a bad vibe altogether. I think I don't think the fans, even if he plays great, I don't think the fans are ever really going to forgive him. You bring Giannis in there, you trade Anthony Davis, some of these other guys maybe, and then you start that rebuild after this year and just kind of see how Cooper Flagg and Giannis play together. I think that could be kind of interesting.
I do too. I think you'd have some work to do in terms of filling out the rest of your roster, especially because you'll have to probably part with some pivotal pieces that you have right now. You
might have to say goodbye to Kyrie too.
Yeah, you might have to say goodbye to him. So I do think that could work. And Giannis has been linked to Dallas before, but then again, he's been linked to every team that is a sizable market in the league. But another team that I have in mind, Phil, and I've heard this, I think they're a sleeper team in all of this, is Toronto.
Okay.
And Toronto has a lot of young talent. They've got Scotty Lewis. They've got Scotty Barnes, excuse me. They have R.J. Barrett. They have Emmanuel Quickley. So I think that could be another spot, but it's all really going to depend on what Milwaukee wants back. If they want 5 first-round picks or something crazy like that, plus a rotational player, well, I don't know how many teams have 5 first-round picks that they're willing to part with. But it's also, to me, a sign of the times, because I do feel like a few years ago, I'd say maybe 5-6 years ago, teams were really willing to part with anybody for the chance of getting a superstar. And now that we've seen some of these mega trades fail tremendously and teams end up behind the 8 ball with their salary cap and not having a future in terms of first-round picks, it really can come back to haunt you. And I think we've started to see that. So I'm not too sure, Phil, where he could end up. I think Dallas is a reasonable destination, but whoever trades for him is going to have to be pretty savvy. I think what you said, the 3-team deal or maybe even a 4-team deal might be good, because really you're going to have to initiate some other assets, because I can't imagine the Bucks just letting Giannis walk for a price that isn't substantial. No,
right, exactly. Again, it's a little bit different when you're trading the face of your team versus just another really good player on your team there. Real quick, we just have a few minutes left, AJ. Just want to kind of rapid fire if you think these guys are going to be in the same uniform they're in, or if you think they're going to be moving on. Jonathan Kuminga, he's another guy that does not seem very happy with the Golden State Warriors, but they have been very shy in even relating him or including him in trade talks. Do you think he's going to stick with Golden State throughout this year?
I think he probably will, because Golden State will want to keep him around. I'm not sure why. They both seem like they're so frustrated with each other. And to be completely honest, real quick, Phil, I'm not even sure what Jonathan Kuminga brings to the table, because I hardly see him in a Warriors uniform at this point. And also, too, he's been playing alongside Stephen Curry, and his role is naturally going to be diminished because he's trying to get in wherever he fits in within Steve Kerr's system. So I think that's a bad relationship, and I think they need to let him go. But I don't think they will, based on their track record.
Right. He's one of those guys in the league that I would just love to see, not necessarily because I don't think he's a good fit with Golden State. I just think he would shine more. I think he's a very exciting player, and I think if he's given that opportunity, maybe on a middling team or a team that is having a down year, or a place that he can get big minutes and be a focal point in the offense, I think we could be seeing a pretty big season out of him. So would be curious to see about that. Another name, a name that I know you really love, and that's LaMelo Ball. Again, he was kind of involved in trade talks that we heard about John Moran and Trae Young about possibly leaving the Charlotte Hornets. Do you think he's going to stick around in Charlotte for another year?
Well, he's another guy, Phil. His value was really low right now. I think especially him coming off of an injury. He's been coming off the bench. He hasn't been playing a whole lot, but I think he might stick around for one more season. But I think they are reaching a boiling point with one another, too. Nothing is working in Charlotte. They've tried the high lottery picks. That hasn't worked. LaMelo is a franchise star. That clearly hasn't worked. This new era under a new head coach is not working. So I think he'll still be in a uniform, but I wouldn't bet on it this time next year.
Yeah, again, I think it would be nice to see. I mean, if you have not watched any Charlotte Hornets games this season, I would encourage it because even if they don't win, they are fun to watch. I mean, they are just jacking up threes. They're running in transition. The defense needs a lot of work, obviously, but when they're hitting shots, they are hitting shots. They're one of only a few teams that to beat Oklahoma City. Saying that out loud sounds crazy, but I think the emergence of Concanipple has also kind of played into the LaMelo thing because I think Charlotte might be trying to move as to him being kind of the focal point of the offense, the face of the franchise. When LaMelo, honestly, I still think he's got a lot left and could be, again, another guy who would look really good in another uniform and giving kind of the wheels to the car, I think. Let him drive the boat a little bit.
Yeah, for sure, man. We talked a lot about it. A lot of people were really, I guess, upset or frustrated or didn't understand the Trae Young trade.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to give him everything he needs, which is a fresh start. Right. And I think Ja, LaMelo, Kuminga, all of those guys are desperate for that, regardless of how good or bad the team is. Sometimes a new jersey is all you need.
Next week, we'll spend a little bit more time focusing in on the Pistons and any potential moves that they might be making ahead of the trade deadline. That's all coming up next week. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning into this latest edition of NBA.